The idea you have for your next business is terrible, and that's great news. Let me tell you what I mean next. Okay, we need to start this off by picking up where we left off last time, because I really felt like there was the beginning of a great idea and something that had come to me, and we just had to, we ran out of time, and this has been rolling around. I want the ability to try to explain what I was saying a little bit better. Would you give me that time, Jim?
I got half an hour for you.
So this is the Throw the Boss Out podcast with Joe Leach and Jim Souhan, starting off with a continuation of where we left off.
Well, go for it.
With Jim's permission.
Please.
We left off talking about this idea of rules versus consequences. And I don't know if I think what I should have said was the consequences that come with rules versus real consequences. I'm going to do my best to explain this, because it has been so paramount to why our business has succeeded, and it's a profound concept that had never hit me before until I was driving down here for the last show. So let me try to explain this again. I brought up the point that when you have, particularly if you have a job or even just living in life, you deal with rules. People give you rules. You might even make some rules for yourself, right? So there's rules everywhere. But you could not, Jim, tell me right now of a rule that didn't get broken at least one time in which the consequences which you were told were going to happen didn't actually happen. Rules are meant to be broken. This is what we hear all the time. And there's a reason that people say that. So can you think of a rule you've broken in which the consequence was immediate? Perfect. I didn't want you to think of one because you completely ruin.
I was trying.
Ruin my thought.
I was trying.
So, but a consequence, right, is one of those things that just happens. You go through life, and it's inevitable. It's imposed by life, the universe, however you want to look at that. It is a consequence. But we get mixed up and we think when someone gives us a rule, we sort of see that as a consequence. Reason I'm bringing this up is this comes into play when you're thinking about starting your business, but it really comes into play after you start your business. Once I got my own business started, I found that I was a lot better at a lot of things than I would have ever expected I would have been at, particularly in making decisions. And the difference was there was nobody setting any rules for me. Life was imposing the consequences. And when I made the mistake, there goes all of my money. When I made the mistake, there goes the one customer that I really needed. And as opposed to my prior life at a job, what happens? They give you rules. You kind of push the rules a little bit. I was a salesperson, so I always pushed the rules. And the consequence, there was never really any consequences. It was always, as they say, a slap on the hand, or somebody would say, hey, can you do this differently? Can you do whatever? So when I made a decision, there was always that kind of that gray, fluffy area of, yeah, well, if I'm wrong, no big deal. And I see that with the people that work in our organization. And that is why in our companies, I don't put people in a position to suffer any personal consequences, but I do put them in a position that if they do make a mistake, if they do make a decision and there's a consequence, I don't get in the way of it. I don't buffer it. I don't berate anybody either. So we have a very open environment where mistakes are great. They help. I look at mistakes. If you have a conscientious person, a mistake is an incredible investment in anything that you do. So do you get what I'm saying? I'm trying to look at I'm trying to read his face and see if he knows what I'm talking about.
I really hadn't thought in these terms before, so I'm trying to grasp it as you're saying it. And one thing about this podcast and any podcast I do on my network, we don't script the stuff out. We don't sit and talk it through. We just have a conversation. So you're getting my initial reaction. You're getting the puzzled look on my face as I try to make my brain, actually fit into all these scenarios. I know what you're saying. I also know that I haven't worked with many people who have thought this way, which I find really interesting.
Yes, I hear that from time to time, and I don't know how to. Sometimes I like hearing that. I like the fact that I might have a different idea, but then.
Well, I think where it applies.
When I leave the room, what are they saying about me?
I think where it applies to me in terms of my job, working for the newspaper, is we have certain journalistic ethical rules that you just can't break, but in terms of writing, in terms of working with sources, in terms of trying to get people to tell you stuff they probably shouldn't tell you, in terms of, having, in terms of covering a team, them not wanting you to go certain places. I'm always messing with stuff. Yeah, I'm always breaking rules. There's some that you can't, otherwise you're not a journalist anymore, but I'm always playing in the gray areas.
Yeah, no, it's, and we were, the last podcast we were talking about, we were just talking about, should you start a business? Are you cut out to start a business? And the point I'm making here is you can, when you start that business, whether you want to or not, you're going to think differently, and you're going to be more equipped to run a business than you think you are, because of that one simple thing I just put out there, is that you're going to have a shift in your mind in which your senses are going to be more keen, your sensitivity to everything that's going around is going to change, and you're going to be more successful than you think you're going to be. I
hope so.
Particularly after that conversation we had, I was on the fence about, are people cut out to be entrepreneurs, or can anybody do it? I'm not going to go as far as to say anybody can do it. There's probably certain people that have thresholds that just won't allow them to do certain things, but I'm leaning way more toward the idea that anybody can do it. So I thought today we would talk about, if you get to that stage and you're saying, okay, I am ready to do this, the next question is, what do I do? What kind of a business do I start? Many people start their business because they first decide they want to start a business. Other people, I think this is what happened with you, it kind of came through something else.
Frustration with other people's businesses.
Yes. And so you didn't set out and say, oh, I'm going to go do this thing. You saw an opening for a better way to do something, and I don't know, did you begrudgingly
I kind of got ticked off. Yeah. I mean, it's funny too, because as a sports writer, so often you encounter athletes or coaches who, I want to prove somebody wrong. And I'm like, hold it. You make millions of dollars, you have millions of fans, you have endorsement opportunities, you have the greatest life in the world, and you're going to let anger motivate you? But we're humans. Anger is more motivating than so many other emotions.
Yeah.
And I kind of got ticked off the way I was seeing things done. And I said, I can do better than that. I'm going to go try to do it better.
Yeah. So the whole starting the business
One
thing,
of these days I'm going to be right.
So in ESO, you didn't want to start a business.
No, I did not.
The business,
I absolutely did not.
The business needed someone to jump in, and I think that happens a lot. We've got people that say, I really want to start a business, and they're always thinking of ideas. There's situations like yours. There's other situations where I suppose people end up with a business, through a family situation or whatever. But I think the person that we're appealing to right now is someone who has tuned into this podcast because they have that thought, I want to start a business. I want to be rid of the boss. I want to have the freedom. I want to do that kind of thing. And so I just really want to encourage people that it's a great idea, and there's a number of ways that people can get into it. And I thought we'd talk about that. Today.
Let's do it.
First, I'm going to start off by a very inspirational story. Now, I suppose I should be careful not to set yeah, right. I was going to say I shouldn't set the standard so high. A lot of this thought process has come over the years, but I remember there's certain little incidences that have had an impact on how I look at these things. Let me start by the premise of saying what I said when we opened the show. The business idea you have right now is terrible. I don't even know what it is, but it's terrible.
You're saying Brandon has to go?
It's terrible. No, I didn't mean to look at Brandon that way. Please don't take offense to that, Brandon. No, it's terrible, because it's probably the first thing you've thought of, or maybe it's even the fifth or sixth thing that you've thought of. But particularly if you think right now, I have the greatest business idea in the world, but you have done nothing about it. My advice for you is to write that on a piece of paper, crumple it up, throw it on the floor, stomp on it, and never think of it again.
Really?
Yes, because that's the first step in being a business owner, is that you can deal with adversity, and you have to realize that you have an emotional attachment to things, and then there's the reality of what really, really happens. Instead of thinking of business ideas that you could own or that would work, that you think are great, my advice is to start kicking up rocks everywhere you go. Start looking for business opportunities where nobody else is looking at them, right? Because we're going to talk about competition and barriers to entry. Maybe we're going to get to that in this podcast. Maybe not, but this is what's going to be important. If it's that obvious, everybody's thought of it. Mm-hmm. And if everybody's thought of it, one of two things has happened. Either everybody's done it, you got a lot of competition, or everybody's tried it and they realized that it didn't work. It doesn't mean you can't start a business. We certainly, the last business we started was in a very competitive, very crowded, marketplace. I don't recommend that. It's actually a lot more work. But let's save the whole barrier to entry thing for later. I want to stay on this thing about looking for businesses. This idea came to me. My wife and I had just gotten married. We moved into this tiny little house in a great neighborhood. We got super lucky, and the people who we bought the house from were just awesome. It was a couple. They had their kids were. I think their kids were high school age, something like that. They were moving. They moved 4 houses down actually, but into a little bit bigger house for what they had to do. And Greg and I were talking. I was a print salesman at the time, so we were talking business. And he said to me, "Yeah," he said, "I should sell you my side business." And I said, "What kind of a side business do you have?" And he says, "Well, I find information about state laws and legislation for associations." And I said, "What do you do with it then?" He said, "I just tell them about it." And I said, "You tell them about it?" I said, "Why don't they get it themselves?" He said, "Because they have to watch every day. Because there might be something about their association, something in there's, and I said, "So you call me?" He goes, "No, I just send them I just write a little postcard and I just send it out when I find something." He said, "The great thing is, while I'm looking for one of them, I find information about a whole bunch of them." He says, "So I have like 20, I think he said he had like 20 clients." And he said, "And each of these little associations, they oftentimes don't have an employee, but they get donations. And so there's a fund. And my fee to watch all year long, to watch the legislations that's happening." And this is back in the 90s. So I'm sure there was no internet. So, I think he said he had a little subscription to the service that didn't cost him a whole lot, but he would look every day and he would find things for his 20 different clients. And at the time, I think he told me and this is in the 90s, I think his fee was $1,500 per employee. And he said, "I spend somewhere between 2 and 4 hours a week doing this." So 2 and 4 hours a week on a part-time job, sending postcards out to 20 different organizations and putting $30,000 into his pocket. Now, this isn't
$30,000 a month?
No, a year. Yeah.
But still, it's
sure
pretty good.
Yeah. But the point is, that's long gone because of the internet, that particular idea. But how did somebody think of that? Mm-hmm. I know the answer to that. He was part of an association. They were having a meeting. Somebody said, "We got to keep up on these rules." He said, "I can do it. I'll do it as a side thing." But then as he was doing it, he thought there's got to be all kinds of stuff. So he literally just made cold calls to organizations that kind of fit, that he knew would have, interest in the regulations. And he said, "I got 20 clients in almost no time." And it's because he found a need that was out there. Was it glorious? Was it, the kind of, is it the business that he would, tell his whole family and relatives about at the dinner table? I don't know, but he found it. And that's what I'm saying to people is, you want to start a business, open your eyes today. Like right now, when you walk out the door, when you're in some boring meeting somewhere, when you're doing something that you aren't particularly interested in, start paying attention. Look for the opportunities, because if you find a business that starts with a vacuum, a service vacuum, a need, everything else will be so much easier.
That makes sense.
So much easier.
And, you know, I know one of your businesses, like you said, is in a very competitive field. And I did the opposite. I went to an incredibly crowded marketplace where people already have plenty of options. And I decided to just try to find my own niche. I have no idea if it's going to work long term or not. But I don't know. I think we actually might be built as one of the few, if not only, regional sports and other podcast networks. We are very unique, and I just think we might have more staying power than like FM radio and iHeart Media. You know, I might be wrong, but that's kind of the niche I'm aiming for.
So I will say this: what I said doesn't mean that you can't make it in a business that's in a competitive environment. And as a matter of fact, on a very micro level, the same thing will happen, because natural selection will happen. You'll hear me talk about this a lot. Natural selection will happen in any situation. So you get into a competitive marketplace, there's no money, right? You're fighting for advertising dollars. It's hard to get. It's, you're pulling your hair out.
Already did?
Right. I was trying not to say anything, but you are frustrated, and your frustration leads to, again, that shift in your mind, and you start to think differently. Right? Against consequences.
Right.
What did I do? I went into a crowded market. I thought it was great. Thought this is going to be easy because I thought I could be so much better than everybody else. But that is always left to the consumers. And you're right. In our business, I think we've done a really good job. But we've had to, because it wasn't nearly as easy as I thought it was going to be. It wasn't nearly as... The competition wasn't nearly as bad as I thought they were from a standpoint of whether consumers were going to spend their dollars or not. Let's talk about that for a minute. We too often start a business or get a business idea because of what people are saying. All right. Now this is going to come into play in a moment. There's one thing that they say that I'm going to have you key in on, but for the most part, people will say, "Oh, I don't like this. I wish there was this. I wish there was that." And we jump on that right away and we say, "Oh, we're gonna go do that." Or even worse, we go through life and we find something that we don't like. Right now, if your business has been started because of something you found that you don't like, double crush that piece of paper and double stomp on it, because that will be the kiss of death if you start a business based on something that irritates you. I'm guessing there may be a 100% failure rate on something like that.
Oh, I might be in trouble then.
Somebody's going to, so I was just going to say, somebody's going to write on Twitter, "Oh no, I did that." And now Jim's saying right here on the podcast.
Right on the podcast. Well, I mean, I did. I started this because I didn't like the way other people were doing these things.
Difference. Big difference. Big difference. You said, "I started it because of what other people were doing." I'm saying don't do anything based on what people are saying.
Got it.
Right? And that is important. So that's what I found out when we started the music company. Is I just looked at it. Was a little arrogant, honestly. I look at the competition, the people that are out there. I saw the really big guys that were doing a great job, and then I saw a whole bunch of people that I thought were doing a terrible job. And I even had people say, "Oh yeah, they're doing a terrible job. They're not doing that." But when it came to actually writing a check or giving us the credit card or doing that, I found that they would go to the place that they didn't really care for that much on a much higher frequency, at a much higher frequency than I thought they would. Because there's so many of the things that go into business. There's convenience, there's comfort level, there's all those things that happen. So I really encourage everybody who's listening.
I will even interrupt and speak to that.
Please.
As a guitar player,
don't tell me you don't like our business, that everybody else is better.
Actually, no, I love your business. And I've told you before.
Because this podcast is over. This is where we're going.
That'd be a great name for a podcast. Right. This podcast is over. And I love your place. And I love the fact that you have comfortable places to sit. You've a great variety of great brands that I have bought before and played before.
But you always buy from someplace else.
No, I have not bought anything from anybody else since I discovered your business.
Okay, that's awesome.
But what I'm saying is that there have been times in the past where I have gone to the big monolithic store that doesn't give you any reason to like them, when I probably should have found more of a mom and pop place that could really use my dollars more, but it was just easy. It was just easy. And that's wrong, but that's the way sometimes consumers think.
So here's the thing. I'm going to interrupt and say it's not wrong. It's what you do because of there's so many other factors that go into it. Like I said, convenience. You happen to be, we're not super convenient to you. It's not bad.
It's not bad,
but it's pretty convenient. There's other stores that are closer that are more convenient, and that's the reality of things. And when you start a business, you have to think about that. You can't predict people's behavior based on people what they say, I guess is my point.
I believe you. I mean, that is the one thing. If you're any student of human behavior at all or on any level, you realize what people say and what people do can be completely different things.
So, like I said, as we got into it, though, we found little interior niches that would help us. Some of the things that we've done is it's really competitive on all the popular products. So we started making products that other people didn't have. We made special runs of things and did whatever. And that all came out of suffering from making the mistake of thinking that we could be just like everybody else, basically. So I think the moral of the story is, when you start a business, there's let's call it a barrier to entry. When the barrier to entry is low, your competition is going to be high. It doesn't mean you can't make it, but it means that the work is going to come later, right?
Yep.
High barrier to entry, and this could be in a matter of cost. It could be a matter of investigation. It could be in what I was talking about. Let's say your hard work is in your inquisitive nature and turning up all those rocks. And if you do all the hard work to find the vacuum, your hard work is done up front. Your business then will keep going. And if we start any other businesses, that will be my number one rule. Never again will I start a business unless I discover a undeniable vacuum in the market. So you just have to think about that. I try to be positive and say, if you love something and you want to start a business that you love doing something, go ahead and do it. I also can say, however, if you find something that has a vacuum, that has a need, and you're maybe not that interested in it, don't put that aside. A lot of people say, well, you should be passionate about your business. You should be passionate about. Of the 3 businesses that we have, I would say the topics themselves, I'm not very passionate about 2 of them. And the third one I'm very passionate about. And frankly, the other 2 are way easier. They're way easier. And it's because you can remove yourself emotionally. Right. You can look at things objectively. You can do, you can do so much more without getting yourself in the way. And I get myself in the way of the music business all the time, lessons learned. So barriers to entry, just real quick too, things like I hear people say, I have this great invention and I'm going to get a patent. That's about the highest barrier to entry that you can have. But it's foolproof if you get it, right? Now, again, it has to be a good idea.
Or if you get patent pending.
Well, even so, patent pending generally means you're on your way to a patent, and so you've kind of reached the level in which you can start safely selling your product without, and you can start doing that ahead of time. We'll talk sometime. I actually went through a whole patent deal.
Oh, I'd like to hear about it
for another company. We'll make a whole show about that.
Absolutely.
Because I learned so much about that whole process, and it was fascinating. But it's expensive. It's completely unpredictable. But that's the epitome of a high barrier to entry with a great payoff, And so you have to think about this. It might be a high barrier to entry because you have to buy some specialized equipment. However, if you do some investigation about that equipment, there's almost always companies out there with that equipment that will lease you the equipment, because they want you to produce their product.
Right.
They want you to use their machine. So sometimes you think, I'll never be able to do that. Those machines they might be $1 million, right? And you might come across a company that says, we will actually do a 2 or 3 year lease for this much money, and you do your business plan, based on that. I'm not telling everybody to rush out and buy a piece of equipment because you can get a lease on it, but this is what I'm saying is that you have to investigate, and there's every one of us walks by billions of business ideas every day without knowing it. I really, really feel that way. That if you have that drive, that you can. There's no way you can fail. And I personally think it's worth doing.
Well, I'll take this opportunity before we hit one more topic or one more tangent to say that we are selling advertising on this program. If you can reach out to me at jsouhan@startribune.com. You can find Joe at the Throw the Boss Out Twitter page or on Facebook. Or is there another good way to reach you?
You can just know
Stalk
me.
you?
If you just know me, stalk me, right? You can send.
We accept stalkers.
Yeah. If they're advertising stalkers.
Yes, only advertising
Right.
stalkers.
We love advertising stalkers. I can't think of a better situation than have advertisers stalking you to give you their money.
Yeah, that's what we're aiming for.
Right.
It's
I think
our
we can
goal.
get there.
I believe so.
Low barrier to entry.
It's very true.
So let's talk about some other things, businesses that people can start. Low barrier to entry things. What about multi-level marketing businesses? Some people, I don't know that much about them. As a matter of fact, one show, we should get someone who's been really successful at a multi-level business that can talk about how that whole process works. Go ahead. I'm
going to play my role in this show, which is to be the guy who doesn't know what's going on and say, what is multi-level marketing?
Really doing good too.
Yeah, I'm an expert
You're doing
at
great.
it.
Yeah.
Absolutely. What's multi-level marketing? What does that mean?
So things like, selling Amway would be, that's the one that everybody thinks of immediately. I don't think they're called that anymore. They changed their name,
Right.
whatever. I remember when I was, probably when we first got into our house, there was the water filter things,
Right.
whatever. Now,
Security systems.
It might be easy for someone to poo-poo and say, but hey, it's an idea. It's a little bit like a franchise where the program's kind of been built in and you can do that. I know that is a high, I don't want to say the negative. You have to really work at those businesses to make it. But I know there are people out there that do that. That's why I think it would be fascinating to have a conversation with people, because I think the attitude out there is, well, you give somebody your money for the entry pack and then it's all over. And I think that statistics show that that's probably how a lot of those companies make their money. But I know for a fact that there are people out there they're doing that. But just talk about home-based businesses. I come from the age of Tupperware, people would come over and have Tupperware parties at our house with my, I don't know if we ever had one at our house, but our neighbor's house, I would say, where the Tupperware thing. There's a lot of people that do good with home-based businesses. Those are great examples of low barrier to entry.
One of my old neighborhoods, a neighboring woman, through a different kind of invitation party, and it was the most uncomfortable I've ever been.
Right. I can tell by the look on your face it has something to do with sex toys.
Yes.
Right.
Absolutely. And I'm
I don't know you that well, but that was definitely the sex toy look.
And this is and the thing is, we're talking about.
Were you there with your wife?
Yeah.
Oh, even way more uncomfortable.
Yeah. Oh, and the couple who invited us over for this thing, and I'm not sure it was kind of vague. The invitation was a little vague. But there's like the most respectable family and the kids are in the basement, and I'm like, what are we doing here?
Yeah.
But I guess that's a business model.
Okay, so just so you know, if I was at that party,
oh God,
I would not know. I love being in those really crazy, weird situations because there's so much stimulation going on. Not that kind, by the way. There's just so much I am a information freak. I am gathering information at every moment of every day, and I'm gathering it from what I'm hearing, what I'm seeing, what I'm smelling, right? So it's one of those situations. I really shouldn't have gotten on that path, but it's a situation.
We're here to embarrass ourselves. Right? That's the way this works.
Oh, if you could see me, Jim and I both have red faces right now, by the way. So it's just to create the visual there. But just so you know, if I was at that party, and whether I knew you or I didn't know you, and you were there with your wife looking at the different articles. Can we call them articles?
Let's try not to, right. But let's please call them articles. Please call them articles.
I don't know what else. But I would be watching your face to see how you were interacting with your wife as you looked at these different things. And I would glean a lot of information that probably would be none of my business based on that. But I think to me, that is, I love to put myself in those situations where it's just really, really uncomfortable. I worked with, he's probably the best salesman.
You know, I feel in
I've ever
uncomfortable
known.
situations.
Right now.
Uncomfortable.
Right. Yeah, but okay, let's talk about that since we're going to be philosophical. What does that mean? You just said, when I'm uncomfortable, I feel uncomfortable. That's stating the obvious.
Yes.
Right? That's like saying feeling bad feels bad.
Right.
So what's your point?
I was just trying to be funny.
So I'm saying that if I look at being uncomfortable as being something different than uncomfortable, let's just say uncommon or different.
Yeah, I think you probably enjoy uncomfortable a little more than I do.
I don't know if I would even go as far as to say enjoy, but I suppose I would say enjoy. I like to experience different things. And so, I would go into that. My wife, if she's listening right now, is probably laughing about because I'll just walk up and talk to anybody if I want to get some information or whatever. And I'm not doing it to be a jerk or to get in anybody's, but I'm really interested. Like somebody's doing something, it just drives her crazy. Somebody will be packing, we'll be at Target or something,
like
and somebody's,
wife.
we'll be at Target and somebody's like putting something in the car and it's like something interesting. I'll just walk up and go, what is that? What do we,
You know, the funny thing is, you should have been a reporter.
really?
I mean, seriously, there's nothing better. There's no better attribute for a good reporter than just natural curiosity.
Right.
Absolutely.
No, I love it.
And really, some of the best stories I've done in my past were just when I had a thought. I was like, why did they do that? Or why do they say that? And just asking a question that leads to a conversation can be the best thing. In fact, at this stage of my career, I probably need to remind myself to be curious.
Yeah.
Because it's so easy to think, okay, I know what's going on. Well, maybe you don't. Ask the question.
So you get that way by just doing things and then replaying it in your head later, going, "Oh, that wasn't so bad," right?
Yeah.
So and being in sales, cold calling and things like that was part of it. I remember when I started at the printing company, the one person told me, we did direct mail. And so the one person told me, I always like to take my mail that I get from home. And then I track down that company and I call them and say, hey, I've got the package in front of me. I know exactly what you do. We have the presses that can print that, whatever. And so I thought, wow, that's great. My neighbor at the time was the librarian for the high school. So I called him and I said, you must get a lot of junk mail at the library because you have so many magazines. And that was the thing we were really good at, is printing direct mail for magazines. And he's like, oh yeah, I get boxes of it. I said, will you save that for me? So sure. So sure enough, I get this massive box of direct mail. So I bring it into the work, like this is maybe 4 months after I get there, and I plop this thing down and I call my new sales buddy over. I'm like, what do you think of this? His eyes are just like saucers, like looking like a lion to a steak. So we're going through all that, and there was a card for a Rolling Stone magazine, and he goes, there you go get them. And my first thought was, I can't call. I mean,
yeah,
Rolling
call
Stone
Jan
magazine.
Wenner.
Right? And he's like, "Go get them! This is awesome." He said, "This is your goal. I want you to go get them." And I did.
Seriously,
I actually got. Our company did the Rolling Stone direct mail and that was like one of my. I bet that was
How
my
did you get 'em?
fifth.
How do you get Rolling Stone?
I called them. I called them, and people say, oh, they all put their pants on the same way. As cliche as that is, that's kind of the.
I think in that era, Rolling Stone, they didn't wear pants. But other than that, it's a good analogy.
Good point. They decide not to put their pants on the same way any other person does, I guess is the way it is. No, I called, and there were certain titles of people that handle that sort of a thing. And so you just work your way through and get to the right person. And it helped. We had one particular product that we were really competitive at. It was a product that they happened to be using. But oh God, this story could go on forever. I'll try to make it short. I was 21 years old. I was just a kid. And the person that I was dealing with said, I need you to come to New York we need to interview we're going to do some work with you. And the way she posed it was like it was us and a bunch of other people that were coming to do this. And so I know our company certainly paid for travel to do things, and it wasn't uncommon to do that. So I remember going to the guy and saying, I'm supposed to go to New York. And he's like, great, just get a bunch of other appointments while you're out there. So if we're going to spend the money, I'm like, oh, okay. And he said, I'm going to have you go with my sales buddy. And I'm thinking, oh, great. So that'll be easy. I don't know if I'd even flown on a plane, to tell you the truth.
Wow. First trip is to New York to
And my first trip is to New York. And literally 3 days before we're going to leave, my buddy says, I can't go. So I go to the guy. I'm like, he can't go. And he said, you're going yourself. And I remember thinking, you've got to be kidding me. So it's a very long story. But when I show up at Rolling Stone, Avenue of the Americas, it was like 1212 or 12 something. Remember the address. You go up the elevator, you get in, and I'm in the lobby, and there's Pete Townshend's guitar smashed to smithereens in a big chunk of lucite that's hanging above the couch that they want me to sit on while I wait for my interview. And
Les Paul or SG?
It was it was a Les Paul.
Okay.
I'm trying to think. Pretty sure it was Les Paul. You really are making me look bad. I own a music store, and I should remember that. So
we can look it up.
I'm pretty sure it was. It was Pete Townshend's guitar. Does it matter anymore?
Not really.
It could have been a Hondo 2 for all I care. And so I'm sitting there, and I'm really thinking to myself, is this a dream? This has got to be a dream. And the woman comes out, and she introduced herself, and she said, you're Joe? And I said, yeah. She said, congratulations, you got our account.
Wow.
All I had to do was show up.
You must have been a good-looking guy.
And do that. No, I don't. No, I don't think that was the case. I think I do know that when I dealt with the New York people, they loved the Midwestern just vibe of things.
Yep.
And as a matter of fact, there was another gal in the organization. We went to lunch. And I'm walking and I'm looking at the buildings, right? I'm staring up, and she comes kind of near me, and she kind of nudges me a little bit. She goes, don't do that. And I said, don't do what? She says, don't look up. They're going to know you're a tourist.
Yeah, no kidding. And, so true. So true.
And then we get a block down, and there's we've always had dogs. We had a pug at the time. And this lady comes walking down the street. She's got 2 pugs, right? So I'm just like, I'm down there, like into the pugs, and I'm petting them, and I'm saying to the lady, these are great dogs or whatever. And the lady is kind of like, the gal who owns the dogs is you could tell she was uncomfortable.
Mm-hmm.
And so I got up and we walked in, and the gal at Rolling Stone said, you don't ever want to do that. And I'm like, why? She's like, she could have pulled out an umbrella and started beating you, and the cops would have been on her side.
That's right.
You just don't approach people like that here,
It's true.
And so it took me a while to learn some of the things. Oh, I wasn't even old enough at that time to rent a car in New York City. So I did make other appointments, but I made them in Connecticut, which, wasn't that far, really, if I'd have been able to leave from Manhattan. Right. No, I had to go to Newark, New Jersey.
Oh my God.
To the airport to rent a car because I wasn't old enough. And I had to drive on the New Jersey Turnpike all the way around to get to Connecticut. If anybody's driven on the New Jersey Turnpike, it is like bumper to bumper traffic at like 70 miles an hour.
The good thing is they always put at least 800, 900 yards between the toll booths.
Yeah, right. Exactly. Just to keep things moving.
Yes.
Right. Exactly. I got to the point where I love driving in New York. I would actually, instead of getting a cab, I would actually rent the car from the airport and bring it in there. New York's really simple. There's one rule: you only worry about what's in front of you.
Right.
If there's
and
a crack,
it's a grid, so you can't get lost.
No. If there's 2 cars and there's 1 foot in between car 1 and car 2, the corner of your bumper is allowed in that crevice, and the person they beep a little bit, but they just know. They just back off, and you go in there. I love it.
And of course, the problem, and I've driven in New York before, the problem with renting a car in New York is you lose out on the entertainment value of sitting in the back of a yellow cab and having them try to kill you. Because that's pretty good stuff. When they are trying to get you to your destination as fast as possible, and they really don't care whether you arrive alive or dead. That's the closest you're going to be to being like an action movie star.
But here are the statistics. I saw 1 cab accident.
Oh no, they're brilliant. They don't get in accidents. They just come this close to them.
Yeah, right. So when you're riding, you can just ride with confidence.
Yeah.
You just go with the statistics.
Oh, I do. I do actually. It's a blast.
So is this a business show or what? I'm not sure. I'm not sure where we went.
I know
with
it
this
was.
thing.
This is our third show. We've already gone off the rails. Which
What was the topic?
You know, usually my shows go off the
kind of
rails the first show, so we're ahead of the curve.
Well, so far this has been fun. We'll just finish up here and just tell people again. You got topics you want us to talk about, including trips to New York, I guess, or
Sure.
stuff like that.
Rolling Stone.
We can.
What kind of guitars are best smashed?
We can do all that. At any rate, see, this is where the literal thing comes in.
You don't have to be
gotta
literal.
I'm just so
talk.
I'm super nervous around him. Actually, Brandon, just so you know, I get really
Yeah,
nervous.
I'm really
around Jim.
intimidating.
He is very intimidating. I think it's no. I'm not going to say
forehead?
That. No, it's not the forehead. It's the large forehead.
My brains are
right?
showing?
Yes, exactly. No, let me end this by saying anybody that's been listening, thank you. It's,
Yes, we do. Hey,
it's
listen,
helpful.
You know, we need listeners. We love listeners. And the cool thing about this, as opposed to writing for a newspaper or sitting behind a desk, is we interact with people. We're very rewarded by people listening. We end up with relationships with our listeners and our advertisers. This is kind of an intimate thing.
I got all that to look forward to.
Absolutely.